to meet you. I'm Dr. Michigo Kim.
Hello, I'm Kim Gi-hoon from Richgo.
The atmosphere in the Seoul market has been declining, starting from the outer areas like Nowon, Dobong, and Gangbuk, which were referred to as the Nodogwang. Recently, even the Gangnam area has seen a halt in its upward trend. In this video, we will discuss the current state of the real estate market and what the future might hold. I recently saw an article saying that home prices in Gangnam have also dropped. In fact, the saying Gangnam is invincible seems a bit out of place now, as it appears that only discounted properties are being traded in Gangnam. What's the atmosphere like?
As you can see, in Gangnam, only properties being sold at discounts of 100 million to 200 million won are currently on the market. As a result, the buying sentiment is weakening and the transaction volume is plummeting, leading to a slowdown in the real estate market, starting from the provinces, then the metropolitan area, and finally the Gangnam apartments. So here you can see that the red line represents the apartment prices in Gangnam. This is the entire Seoul. So as you can see, what's happening with both of them right now, it's no longer able to rise. This is what we're seeing right now. I'll go into more detail later by showing you some charts directly on Richgo. If you look at the recent transactions, there's the Rimian Daechi Palace in Daechi-dong, Gangnam. This is the 21st floor, which is quite a royal floor. But last September, a fourth floor unit was sold for 3.65 billion won. However, even though this is a much more premium high floor unit, it has been sold for 100 million won less in just 3 months.
A drop of 100 million won in 3 months is significant.
Royal floors, fourth floor is 3.65 billion won. Royal floor might be 3.8 to 3.9 billion won, 200 to 300 million won extra. It would probably be about 200 to 300 million won more. So if you think about it, that's a drop of about 300 to 400 million won, right? Next, in the case of license, the 18th floor, at the end of December, it was sold for 2.6 billion won, 15 million won. But just 2 months ago, in October of last year, it was sold for 2.85 billion to 1. So how much has it dropped in 2 months? So that's about a drop of 230 million won. Next, we have the Godok Gratium in Godokdong, Gangdong-gu. This one was sold for 1.48 billion won, and it's dropped about 100 million won in just a month. So we're seeing these declining transactions happening continuously in Gangnam. And Seocho, I think that's how you should look at it.
We've been hearing news about the market decline in the outskirts of the provinces, but even in Gangnam, prices have dropped by 100 million, 200 million, or even 300 million won in just a few months.
That's right.
Still, there are many cases where transactions just aren't happening.
There are hardly any transactions?
Exactly.
So there are really no transactions. And even the ones that are happening are only for really cheap properties, right?
It's in Gangnam, but you must lower the price by several hundred million won to sell.
That's right. Yes, but we still have a long way to go. I hate to say it, but the real estate market in 2025 won't be too bad in the first half, but the second half is the real issue. So I believe we're going to see movements close to a crash in the second half.
Overall, how much are apartments in Seoul currently being sold for?
Yes, the average transaction price is also very important because it gives us insight into the energy of the market. So if you look at September, last September was 1.055 billion won. And in October, it was just over 1.2 billion won. What about November, December, and January as time goes on? So in January, of course, the data isn't fully compiled yet. Although the data isn't fully compiled yet, as of January 14th, the actual transaction prices have fallen below 1 billion won. The average transaction price shows that the energy in the market is significantly weakening. So that's what we're talking about right now.
So the overall average for apartments in Seoul has fallen below 1 billion won.
There are apartments, villas, and officetels, and if we look at the specifics, in December, the National Housing Price Trend Survey showed that apartment prices dropped by 0.11%. On a national level, the metropolitan area saw a slight decline of 0.02%, but for multifamily homes, the nationwide drop was 0.04%, and in the metropolitan area, it was 0.01%. Single-family homes, on the other hand, are showing a slight increase. However, multifamily homes saw a nationwide drop of 0.04%, and in the metropolitan area, it dropped by 0.01%. It seems that single-family homes have seen a slight increase. Yes. And here, we have Seoul, but how does it compare to the rest of the country and the metropolitan area? It still shows that everything has gone up. It's coming out right. I'll show the data. This helps us see the price decline. The market will stay stable.
It seems like people are really interested in how much longer the decline in apartment prices will continue or how much further they might drop. For now, many people believe that the first half of the year will continue to show a slight decline. There's a prediction, but what are your thoughts on it, sir?
The first half of the year will be either slightly stable or moderately stable, either slightly stable or moderately stable. That's at least somewhat okay. But the second half of the year is going to be really serious. However, most real estate experts are predicting the opposite of what I think. Most experts are predicting a trend of high in the beginning and low at the end, while I think it will be high in the middle and low at the end, or a high in the middle and a low in the end. So this is the current outlook. So it's completely conflicting right now.
Aren't transactions non-existent right now?
Transactions are non-existent.
Check transaction volume.
See the transaction volume, July 2024, 9,200 transactions sold. August, 6,500 transactions. What about September? It dropped to less than half. September had 3,000 transactions. October is around 2,490. January has 175 transactions. And in January, only 175 transactions have taken place so far. The number of transactions is really small.
After the loan regulations have really kicked in, we can see some signs of recovery in the renovation market. But we've been looking at the sales side. Should we also take a look at the important Jeonse data?
Yes. If you take a look at the Jeons, it shows that the prices for apartments are still on the rise. The entire metropolitan area, including Seoul. Then it shows that the prices for multifamily houses are declining, but only in Seoul they are rising. In the case of single-family homes, it's showing a slight decline nationwide, a weak increase in the metropolitan area, and a weak increase in Seoul.
Now, we'll check the Richgo data shortly to see how things are looking in real time. But if you look at the articles, one area where the Jeonse demand has remained strong is Daechidong, known for its good school fees. I've heard that the Jeonse prices in Daechidong have also dropped.
That's right. So if you look here across the country, one area with a very high demand for Jeonse due to its school district is Daechidong, and the Jeonse price for the Uma apartment in Daechidong has dropped nearly 300 million won in just 2 months.
Wow, a drop of 300 million won in Jeonse is quite significant.
Yes, that's right. Now if you look at it, Gangnam-gu has also dropped compared to last week. So, after 11 months, the Jeonse prices in Gangnam-gu have also turned to a decline. Songdong-gu, Dongdaemun-gu, and Gangdong-gu have also seen declines. So, many people have been talking about the supply shortage and how Jeonse prices will rise over the next 25 years. But as I mentioned before, I've mentioned this several times based on the data. Well, for that to happen, the Jeonse prices would need to be really good. But that's not the case. The Jeonse prices are actually falling. Even though the data clearly says this, there are still too many experts talking nonsense. So, I'll show you the data a bit later. Of course, there are still areas that are rising right now. But the movement is different now. The intensity of this increase has really weakened a lot. Let's take a look at the actual Richgo data. Before we look at the details, let's talk about the whole country. Let's talk about the whole country. So, this is called a flower chart. If you move to the right of this cross line, it means the transaction price is going up. And if you move to the left, it means the transaction price is going down. So, can you see where the transaction prices are going up? In places like Seoul, Gyeonggi, Incheon, and Ulsan, it's dropping. In places like Daegu, it's dropping in places like Daegu and Jeju. But the place that went the farthest to the left has dropped the most. The place that has moved the farthest to the right has increased the most. And this data is from September, when the second phase of the stress DSR was implemented. September. So let me click on Seoul. How are the transaction prices in Seoul doing? There's almost nothing now. The increase has almost stopped. The Jeonse prices have already, it started to drop from mid-December. It's already in a downward trend, and while it's not significant, it has slightly turned negative. Gyeonggi province. How are prices in Gyeonggi province? Since November, it's been stable. Since then, it's been continuously negative. How are the Jeonse prices in Gyeonggi province? It's almost stopped. Increase. Shall we take a look at Incheon? How are the transaction prices and Jeonse prices in Incheon? Both are declining. Both are declining. So what do you think about the overall atmosphere in the metropolitan area? The atmosphere in the buying and renting market has completely changed. Can you see it clearly? Of course. Of course, starting from January, the income limit for the special Jeonse program will be expanded, so it might get a little better. But for now, the movement is like this until early January. However, after February, once the Lunar New Year is over, we might see a slight upward trend again around March or April. But for now, the movement is like this until early January. But probably, after February, once the Lunar New Year is over, we might see a slight upward movement, starting around March or April.
We've looked at the overall situation now. I want to take a closer look at the Seoul area that we talked about earlier.
Oh, I see. So, if you look at this, it's for 2024. I've been looking at this since October. So, and if you look at this, this is the buying. So far, looking at the cumulative transaction prices, there haven't been any places that have dropped, right? So how about the Jeonse? Oh, it's at 9 now. Songpa-gu, Gangdong-gu, Dongdaemun, these areas are currently declining. Let's look at this in a flower chart. And the source of this data is the weekly statistics from the Korea Real Estate Agency. So we can increase it a little, but we can only extend it by a month or two at most. Still, we need to be a bit quick. So you can think of it as that kind of data. If you look, you can see the areas that are declining, right? Who is it? Songpa-gu has dropped a lot. It's Songpa-gu. The John's prices in Songpa-gu are continuously dropping, while the buying prices are showing an increase. Next, let's take a look at Gangnam-gu. It's on the far right, right? How are the buying and John's prices in Gangnam-gu doing right now? Now, John's prices are falling. The buying prices used are stable. It's almost like the increase has stopped. Next, in the case of Seocho, you can see that the energy is gradually weakening. Right. Now, if you look at Songdong-gu, the Jeonse prices are dropping sharply. It's dropping. Now, there are also places where the sales prices are turning down. And if you look at Gangdong-gu, what do you think about it? The sales prices in Gangdong-gu started to decline from December. The John's prices have been continuously declining since November. Yes. Yes. So, in Gangdong-gu, and if you look over here, Guro-gu is also seeing both sales prices and John's prices dropping, right? And how about Dongdaemun-gu? The sales prices and John's prices are both dropping, right? It's high in Dongdaemun-gu. Yes. How about Nowon-gu? Nowon-gu is also experiencing a simultaneous decline. So, around December, the sales prices started to change a bit. Let's take a look at the data from December. So it's clearly visible. So, can you see the areas where the sales prices have been declining since December? You can see it clearly on the map, right? The outer areas have all turned to a decline, right?
As I mentioned earlier, Nodogwang is all in decline. Gwanak-gu, Dongbuk-gu, Yunpyeong-gu.
And there are many areas where Jeonse prices are also declining, right? And if you look at this in a flower chart, it looks like this. Right now in Dongdaemun-gu, Gangdong-gu, Gumcheong-gu, Guro-gu, Gangbuk-gu, Dobong-gu, Eunpyeong-gu, Gwanak-gu, Nowon-gu, and Jungnam-gu, the sales prices are all declining. At least in areas like Seongdong-gu, Songpa-gu, Yongsan-gu, Seocho-gu, and Gwangjin-gu, the sales prices are currently rising. Overall, if you look at Seoul, the energy has decreased a lot, but some areas are still seeing an increase. But it's not just the sales prices. They're also coming down below this cross line. The areas where John's prices are declining are also increasing quite a bit right now. So, as many people are saying, the phenomenon we're seeing right now is completely the opposite of what you'd expect, like skyrocketing John's prices due to a supply shortage.
We've looked at this data and confirmed it, but there are still some opinions suggesting that the Korean government might lower interest rates, and because the supply is decreasing, John's prices will rebound. Those opinions keep coming up. What are your thoughts on this, Representative?
Of course, there could be areas where John's prices rebound depending on the region. And one thing is for sure, in the case of the metropolitan area, like Seoul or the surrounding Gyeonggi province, the supply is definitely low in 2026. In 2026? So, there could be a rebound in 2026. Let me show you some more data. We talk based on data. So, this is the future supply amount, including the unconfirmed quantities in the metropolitan area. Now let's take a look at this by quarter. Then, if we look at it by quarter, we can see it in more detail. So as you can see, that's the supply. It's the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. When will it definitely start to decrease? It will definitely start to decrease from the first quarter of 2026. So the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter of 2026. Up until then, and even until around the middle of 2027, the supply will be very low, especially through the second quarter. That's a fact. This is a fact. So I also believe that John's prices could rise in 2026, and I'm casting my vote for that. However, in the second half of this year and the second half of 2025, there's a very high possibility that a significant economic shock will hit Korea. Do you know what will happen if that occurs? The demand for Jeonse is plummeting. Jeonse prices are falling. So I think there's definitely a possibility of that. So I don't think there's a high chance that Jeonse prices will rise significantly until 2025.
As you mentioned, there are various variables at play. So, due to loan regulations, interest rate changes, and uncertainties in the domestic and international economy, we need to keep an eye on how the real estate market will unfold. I'll wrap up this video here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thank you.